There is a room in Hampton Court that you cannot enter without first walking through another room, then another, then another. If you want to reach the far end of the Tudor palace begun in 1515, you move through a sequence of occupied spaces, each one leading to the next, each one traversable only by crossing whatever activity, whatever person, whatever degree of intimacy happens to be occupying it at the time. There is no other route. The building has made no provision for one. This is not an oversight. It is the governing logic of every significant European house built before the late 17th century. Rooms arranged in sequence, access shared by everyone, privacy a matter of social negotiation rather than architectural fact. The corridor did not yet exist, and in its absence, so did the thing we now take for granted as the basic condition of domestic life. Hampton Court is not unique in this regard. Hardwicke Hall, the great Derbyshire house completed in the 1590s for Bess of Shrewsbury, organises its principal apartments in the same Enfilade logic, room opening directly into room, no corridor threading alongside, no dedicated passage pulling movement out of lived space. The plan is a sequence, not a circuit. If you needed to move from one end of the house to the other without disturbing the occupants of the rooms in between, you had no architectural means to do so. Selective access was impossible to enforce because every path crossed every occupied space. The house could not distinguish in plan between a servant carrying coal and a guest arriving for dinner. They moved through identical routes. Privacy, where it existed at all, was a custom, a knock, a wait, a deference, not a guarantee. The corridor changed this, and it changed it precisely. The architectural historian Robin Evans traced its proliferation in English houses from approximately 1597 onward, in a 1978 essay that remains the foundational theoretical text on the subject. Evans argued that the new passage type did something more significant than add convenience. It separated persons spatially. It converted privacy from a social practice dependent on the goodwill and attentiveness of other people into a structural condition embedded in the building itself. Once you had a corridor running alongside the rooms rather than through them, you had a mechanism for controlling who encountered whom, and under what circumstances. The house could now enforce a distinction it had previously only implied. What had been a matter of manners became a matter of geometry. This had consequences that the earliest corridor houses did not fully anticipate. The most significant of them involved servants. Victorian country house planning, documented with characteristic precision by Marc Giroir in his 1978 study of English domestic architecture, developed the corridor's segregating logic into something close to a complete parallel infrastructure. Back-of-house corridors, separate staircases, service wings connected to the principal rooms by passages that the family would never use. Collectively, these created a second building inside the first. Servants moved through this shadow circulation system, appearing in rooms only at the moment their function required it, and withdrawing through doors that the architectural convention of the house treated as effectively invisible. The building had invented a mechanism for making an entire class of people architecturally absent from the domestic life they were sustaining. The corridor had begun as a means of protecting privacy. In the Victorian country house, it became a means of enforcing invisibility. The same instrument, moved into a hospital, did something different again. Florence Nightingale's pavilion ward system, developed through the 1850s and 1860s, replaced the old through-room hospital layouts, in which patients, staff and visitors moved through wards in sequence, much as Tudor courtiers moved through palace apartments, with a plan type organized around a single aspect ward accessed from a central corridor. The logic was epidemiological. The corridor enabled cross-ventilation. Windows on the ward's outer wall, corridor wall opposite, air moving through the bed space along a path that could be calculated and controlled. It also gave nurses an unobstructed sightline along its length, which made observation possible without physical traversal of the ward. Nightingale understood the corridor not as a social instrument, but as a clinical one. Her pavilion plan defined hospital architecture for the following century, and the corridor was its spine. That clinical dimension sharpened further in Finland in 1933, when Alvar Aalto completed the Paimio Sanatorium. The building was designed for tuberculosis patients. and the corridor's orientation was a medical specification, not an aesthetic preference. North-facing corridors were required so that direct sunlight would not fall on resting patients' faces during daylight hours. The compass bearing of the passage was a therapeutic decision. Here, the corridor had become an instrument precise enough to have a direction, not merely a route through a building, but a tool calibrated to the specific biological conditions of the bodies it served. It was, in its way, the furthest distance the corridor had traveled from the Tudor house. No longer about privacy, no longer about class, but about the relationship between a human body and the angle of winter sun over a Finnish forest. Le Corbusier was aware of all of this, the corridor's history as a separator, as an instrument of class, as a clinical device. And in 1952, with the Unité d'Habitation in Marseille, he made a deliberate counter-argument. The building contains 3 internal streets, corridor-scaled passages running through the mass of the building on levels 3, 6, and 9, lined with shops, a hotel, communal services. Le Corbusier called them rues intérieures, interior streets, and the name is not decorative. It is a claim that the internal passage could be collective rather than privatizing, that the logic which had spent 3 centuries pulling people apart could be inverted to bring them together. The corridor as social infrastructure, the passage as the building's public realm. Whether it worked as social theory is a question visitors to Marseille can still argue about in the building itself. But as an architectural proposition, it was the most serious challenge the corridor had received. The challenge came from a different direction in 1968, when Robert Probst designed the Action Office system for Herman Miller. The modular panel landscape was explicitly conceived as the abolition of the internal corridor. A democratic gesture, a refusal of the hierarchical circulation logic that ran through office buildings as plainly as it ran through Victorian country houses. What Probst's system became, as corporate procurement departments stripped it of its more expensive spatial generosity through the 1970s and 1980s, was the cubicle. A landscape of 5-foot partitions, identical workstations, and no corridors. Except that the cubicle, in eliminating the corridor's walls, eliminated only its form. The geometry of movement through a cubicle farm is corridor geometry, narrow, linear, defined by solid surfaces on either side, except that the surfaces are now padded and portable and owned by a furniture company rather than a contractor. The corridor had returned without its name, without its walls, and without its capacity to deliver the privacy that had been its original argument. That argument is worth holding on to. The corridor did not appear in the English domestic plan because architects were thinking about passage. It appeared because they were thinking about persons, about the problem of who encounters whom, and where, and on whose terms. The passage was the solution. Everything the corridor subsequently became, the servant's shadow world, Nightingale's epidemiological spine, Alto's north-facing medical instrument, Le Corbusier's collective street, the vestigial geometry of the open-plan office, was a variation on that original act of spatial separation. The corridor is not, in the end, a convenience. It is a claim about who controls the terms of